It's time for a new Megadeth album. The 6-year gap has been closed. Dystopia back in 2016 was badass, a great rebound from the tepid and forgettable Super Collider. I remember listening to Super Collider the day it came out. Around that time was the first Black Sabbath album with Ozzy in a long time. Then Queens of the Stone Age came out with Like Clockwork, so a lot of great albums were coming out that month. So I got to Megadeth, and I was so sour over Super Collider that it killed my interest in the band for a while. Even when Dystopia came out, I didn't bother listening to it until years later. Yesterday, in fact. But Dystopia was a cool album, and now there's the sick, the dying, ... and the dead. Notably, David Ellefson isn't on this album. He was in the studio for the recording, but his tracks were re-recorded by Steve DiGiorgio after, a video got leaked. He was rehearsing a new song that got cut from the album, Countdown to Orgasm. It's a new interpretation of Countdown to Extinction. But he handled his firing pretty well. He nutted like a squirrel. Mustaine obviously didn't want Megadeth to do their version of Load, and definitely not Reload despite his Metallica worship, so Steve, ever the reliable bass player, saved the day. The album opens with the title track. There's a sample from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Bring out your dead! There are quieter guitars than typical for a Megadeth opener, and that's when it occurs to you that the album is going to be interesting. Then the band kicks in, and the riffs remind you of some of the songs on Euthanasia and Cryptic Writings, only heavier. Dave's voice is still as intact as ever. In other words, he makes it work for Megadeth. And it's in a slightly lower register given his age. About 2 minutes and 30 seconds in, and the song slows down and, gets pretty quiet. It's a drastic change. Think the intro to Foreclosure of a Dream. Then it's back in full force and there's a brief guitar solo. Megadeth's focus on lead guitar is still there. There's even a small drum solo before the break. Right off the bat, we know that the songwriting for this album is still Megadeth doing what Megadeth does best. Complex, tight, powerful songwriting. This is a band that has nothing left to prove, and they're still putting in the effort. Life in Hell is a swift romp that would work on any of the 80s Megadeth albums. And I gotta say, I'm liking that Megadeth is allowing some drum solos here and there in the songs. There's a speed change about 2 minutes in, and Dave gives some growl speak for an almost march-type section. Notably, we also have Ice-T as a guest vocalist on one of these songs, Night Stalkers. Gotta warm up for that next Body Count album. He's doing a part about Special Ops Forces. It couldn't have been too hard, being a cop on Law & Order. The song almost goes into Testament territory with the frantic nature of the guitars, but those sweet guitar melodies remind you that it's still Megadeth. There's even a part where the notes echo out, like at the end of Ashes in Your Mouth. Look, no matter how good these newer albums are, I'm always going to compare them to the older ones. That comes with a band that's been around as long as Megadeth. Regardless, Dave's as serious as a heart attack on this album. He's got blood. He's out for blood, man. The songs here mostly range in the 4-minute to 6-minute range. There's a lone short track, but at 55 minutes for the main album, make sure to make time for it. We have a slow and heavy jam with Dogs of Chernobyl, about nuclear winter. Even the guitar solos take a breather here, but if you're familiar with Megadeth, you already know what they do as far as the songwriting goes. There's fast and slow riffs, there's a lot of variety, and in the 21st century, it's been more drum heavy as far as the mixing is concerned. So The Sick, The Dying, and The Dead is another Megadeth chapter in the vein of The System Has Failed, Endgame, United Abominations, etc. In fact, this album really is a mix of that version of Megadeth with hints of the old version of Megadeth. Sacrifice even has the call and response background vocals akin to Euthanasia and Cryptic Writings. The biggest example of attempted commercial songwriting, like on those albums, is Killing Time, but fortunately, Dave by now seems to have learned his strengths. Junkie allows for a break from war and politics, and, junkie drugs, this is a subject that's familiar to Dave, given his past. Soldier On has the sweating bullets rhythm, just makes you want to dance. Maybe dance like the Foreman Elf. There's a bonus track, a cover of Sammy Hagar's This Planet's on Fire. Set the world on fire! And Sammy Hagar is a guest. Interestingly, there's also a Dead Kennedys cover, Police Truck. Given punk's influence on early thrash metal, it's appropriate. So, is this Megadeth album worth listening to? If you're a fan of modern Megadeth, yes, absolutely. If you're a fan of Megadeth, period, yeah. It's a great example that Megadeth still has what it takes to make heavy music. Even the artwork's cool to look at. After all, they did bring the dots back into the album title. The dots tended to add a mysterious cleverness to the band. My favorite song on here has to be Celebutant. Really good songwriting shifts that work well with each other. And there's Mission to Mars, which also has cool guitar sounds. It's pretty funny too. He goes, "Hello, ladies," and they respond, "Hello, Moon Man." These are the two most fun songs on the album, and I prefer fun Megadeth over serious Megadeth. I'm hoping that Megadeth stays on a good trend. It seems like they have a few great albums, and then they make a couple of not great albums, and then make a comeback, and the cycle repeats. Hopefully they'll break the cycle and just keep making great albums. Anyway, it was a fun album. Thank you for watching, and grind on.